Okay, welcome to the Zoning Board of Appeals work session, January 19th, 2021. Happy New Year to everybody.
Thank you. Happy New Year.
Thank you.
David, did you want to start off with the new application?
I just hope everybody had a chance to look at it. I know there was a comment about a typo that I can correct. And I just wanted to connect with Chick, see if there's anything in there that he feels that I should be adding for the wetlands permit, portion of the applications that come in, because most of it is really centered around the zoning applications, area relief and whatnot, and not so much on requirements for wetlands relief. So if there's something more that he'd like to add to help him in his review, I'd be happy to.
Okay, so that's the email that you circulated I think
Yes.
last week?
Yes.
Oh, okay. I will have to look at that in more detail and get back to you. We had done some work for the village board a couple of years ago for some ideas on the checklist, and I will definitely let you know. Are we looking to act on that, or is that something that'll come up at the next meeting, or is it more policy?
Well, it's a brand new application for all matters into the zoning board. So I want to make sure we encompass everything, but it's my understanding that that's something that the board wants to get done sooner rather than later, so that we can kind of dispense with having incomplete applications.
Me, with the sooner the better. There's so many things that are, I feel, difficult to understand because they're or left out. It's a chore. Some site plans don't have numbers on them, or they don't show the whole thing. There's one tonight. I also have a question, David.
Yes.
A letter was submitted in favor of an application that's dated, but it turns out it was dated the end of November, but then the property was sold in early December, and the person, so that's of no use. I mean, that's slightly, I don't feel good about having received that personally. It was in a lawyer's packet. It's misleading.
But let's address that when we address the application. How quickly, David, could this be implemented, the new application?
I believe it's as simple as an email to Jackie and Chris Talbot for them to post it, then get it posted on the village's website and, be able to print it. It's, it's a Word document that's easily transferable between myself and them, and could easily, be posted on the website.
Hey, David, I scanned it over. Maybe I missed it, but one of the things that on an application, I thought was a good idea is that they put the accessory building setback and the primary residence structure setbacks on the survey so that we can see visually, exactly how much relief is being requested.
Okay. So let me see if that was in the checklist.
Excuse me, could I just interrupt? I'm not quite sure where we are on the agenda. Am I missing something, or are we speaking about an actual application?
It's not an actual, it's about the actual form to use for the applications.
So should I record that at the top then there? Sorry, guys, I didn't know about it. Would you like me to type something about that at the beginning?
Sure, yes. Yeah, Dan's idea is a good one if it's not.
I'll add that in. That's no problem.
But provided by the surveyor.
Right.
And I'll get you comments within a couple of days, certainly before Friday.
That would be great, because then at least for the February meeting, it would be up and going.
Yep.
So David, would we vote on it at the public meeting on the next Thursday night?
I think we can. I don't think you need to, but I think you can adopt it then. You know,
Okay.
the village code just says that the applications are to be made, you know, in the form prescribed by the board. So it really doesn't matter if it's at the pub. That's not something that requires a public meeting, but we can adopt it, you know, either before or after you're done with the public hearings next week.
Okay, and is it reasonable to request photographs of the properties included in the packet?
That's entirely up to you guys. I mean, given the nature of current technology, most people have a camera in their phone, and could provide that. But it's up to the board. I don't know of any other zoning boards that require that at this time, but that doesn't mean you can't be the first and can't be the ones to do it.
The ARB required it. And the
Right,
neighbors.
I don't, like I said, I was very particular in saying zoning board.
I did hear that.
The relief you're granting really shouldn't be related to aesthetics as much as an ARB, but it definitely, I think does contribute to being able to visualize size and mass and, potential impacts on neighbors. So I could see how the board felt that was something that we could add that to the checklist.
I think that there are some applications where you don't need photographs, so we probably could just request them as the case evolves.
I'll just add from the wetland perspective, the DEC does require photographs. So most applicants that require both permits already have that package. And often we do get them for wetlands permits. I think on the wetlands end, it would be a good thing to have.
Okay.
And sometimes these places are slightly inaccessible. Why can't we have photographs? It doesn't have to.
No, I'm not saying that you
You don't need
can't.
to send, a fancy photographer, but really it helps.
Yeah.
It also refreshes our memory when we're going over these applications that go on forever. The more information I have, the better I would do. So I'm in favor of it.
Can we add a requirement for photographs? It does help with seeing the perspective from the neighbors as well, and the streetscape, etc.
Sure. I mean, how detailed do you want to be? Specific photographs, street view from neighboring properties?
I think street view and then 4 elevations, from each side.
Okay.
Can we move on? Should we move on to our first, I guess, pending decision?
Fine by me. I think we're done with that.
Okay, David, what do we need to do for 71 Walnut Street? It's an unusual situation where we closed the meeting or closed the application and then received submissions following our closing of the meeting. What do we need to do now?
You would need to vote if you're going to reopen the meeting. Would be to vote to reopen it and have it reposted and noticed.
So if we reopened it, it would still need to be reposted and renoticed?
Oh, let's see.
To me, that's not reopening anything, though. To me, that's just starting a different story.
I think it's, the informing the neighbors. I don't
Yeah,
know.
because it had been closed, so any neighbors who had been viewing it would have no expectation that the application would be changing.
Okay, so we're asking them to reopen it or to re-advertise and resubmit. So it would be a new application, wouldn't it?
No, I think it's just re-advertising this application, re-advertising the relief that they're requesting. I don't think you're not requiring a new application and a new application fee and whatnot, you're reopening this one for slightly different relief.
Okay, and what would we need to do to accomplish that tonight?
Just a vote to reopen it.
Okay, what's the board's view of reopening it with a requirement that they re-advertise and resubmit? Do we have 3 votes to do that?
I'm a nay.
Dan and Kevin, do you ever do this where they don't like the decision, so they come back to us and ask us to relook at it in a different way? It feels like
We're making some changes,
But you just did it on 131 Flying Point.
taking the.
We didn't vote on 131 Flying Point.
We didn't have an official, there's no decision on this one either. Granted, the tenor of the room, I think the applicant picked up on, but there was no formal decision to deny it. If that was the case, then it would need you'd be reopening a determination, and that would require the whole board to vote in favor of that. There's no official decision rendered on this one either.
Okay, so what's the consequence if we don't vote to reopen it? What would the applicant need to do?
File a new application for the lesser relief that they've now said they would be willing to move on with.
Okay, so but is there any detriment to them in requiring them to do that?
Time and fees.
Okay, I mean, I think that's where the board is going, but I'm not sure. I don't think we have 3 votes to reopen it as is. But I mean, I could be wrong, but I don't think we have 3 votes to reopen it as is. I think the board would prefer a new application.
Not me.
Right.
I'll vote to reopen it if it'll make it easier on everybody concerned, including the applicant. Personally, I think we dragged this out for way too long already. This should have been voted on months ago. I don't know what we're doing here. I really don't know.
Yeah, we're just piling up on the voted on cases here.
Yeah, but that's just it. We wanted to vote on it. And frankly, we did vote on it.
I'd love to vote on it. We have the opportunity to do that, no?
Yeah. Let's vote on it.
I mean, we did at the last work session. David, is that another option that at the public meeting, we simply vote on it?
Right, you can say you're not reopening it as the applicant requested, and we can vote on the application that you had in front of you.
That would be the natural progression if you deny the reopening, right?
Correct.
That's where we were headed. It's just now, because they saw that we thought that they might not get what they wanted. But I feel like we're just endlessly doing this with them, and that we really had come to something of a decision, but I could be wrong.
Well, I don't know how much the changes to the application, I think their expectation or hope was that would sway the board in regards to the hot tub by removing the garage pool house structure and the relief that was necessary for that.
Legally, David, it was closed. So a letter from the attorney, I was taught that closed is closed, that whatever someone says or writes is superfluous at that point.
No, it's not part of the record in making your decision, but that doesn't mean that it doesn't exist.
Okay, I just don't know.
Yeah, no, I mean, if they put in some study based on the information that was previously presented or visuals or something like that, then that should not be considered as part of the record for making your determination. But if they ask you to reopen the application, you don't just ignore the letter because it's done after the hearing was closed. You have the option to.
Okay, I just don't.
Okay, so what's before us, David, if I could summarize and just let me know if it's accurate, is if we don't have 3 votes to reopen 71 Walnut Street. Then we'll proceed to vote at the public meeting, and the decision will be made at the public meeting. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay, so
I would draft a decision for you guys to officially vote on.
okay. So do we have 3 votes to reopen the meeting?
Not me. I'm a no.
I'm also a no.
I'm a no.
There you go.
Okay, so we
There
do
you go.
have 3
You
votes
can't
to
open it.
open the meeting. Okay. What's the next?
I believe Gilbert Flanagan has his hand up. I assume it's on this application.
Yes, I tried to say that. There are 2 hands up. I have Lisa Zaluga and Mr. Flanagan, both with their hands up.
If the board would like to hear from them.
Well,
And what case is it for?
This is on the request to reopen Walnut.
Oh, it's still on Walnut, okay.
David, can we hear from the applicants after the application has been closed?
Yes, again, it's not part of the record. If they're here to ask you to reopen it, you can listen to them.
Okay, but it's not
It
part of
shouldn't
the
be-
record.
It's not part of the record, and anything that they provide shouldn't be used as either a basis for any determination for or against the application.
Okay, sure.
Mark, could you give them some kind of a time limit,
Can't they just come to the regular meeting and ask before we
That's
vote
entirely
on
up
it?
to you. I was just noting that they had their hands up.
I don't think they can come and ask, can they ask for it to be reopened at the regular meeting, David?
It's already been closed. There won't be a public hearing. There is
Oh,
no
right,
public
right,
hering
right.
left.
There is
So
no.
this would be
it's just
their
us.
opportunity to speak if you want them to.
Mark,
I know, I mean, listen, I don't have a problem listening to Gil. He's here for this application, so of course, put him on. It's not part of the record. I just wanted to clarify. This isn't part of the record. The application's been closed, and, let's hear what Gil has to say. Mr. Flanagan.
I'm happy to let him in. And what about Mrs. Zaluga? What would you like me to do?
It's a different case.
no,
I believe she's the architect on this application.
So I'll let both of them in. There they go. Mr. Flanagan, if you don't mind turning on your video and unmuting yourself, and Lisa the same, please.
Okay, can everyone hear and see me?
We see you,
Yes.
Gil.
Can you hear,
Yes.
you can hear me? Okay.
Yep.
I'd just like to start off by saying that it was already pointed out that this is not unheard of for you to reopen a case. You're just considering a case currently on Flying Point Road that you reopened because the applicant heard a number of your comments and made some significant changes to the application, and you listened to him. So how can you do that to them and not for us? One of the things that we heard you say at one of the earlier meetings is that there were too many variances and we should make a choice. Well, we've eliminated one of the variances. We've offered to eliminate. In fact, it's the variance that has the most amount of square footage and the most massing of the entire project. And we would certainly hope that you take that into consideration. If the point of these discussions and considering these applications is to come to a reasonable solution to problems, which has been the history of this board as long as I've ever practiced before it, who's prejudiced by reopening it? Especially if you say, well, we can bring a new application. Well, I don't see the difference. It would seem to be more efficient if you're talking about efficiency and wanting to speed things along and move these cases along. Give us a chance to show how we've substantially reduced the amount of application being requested. So I would respectfully request, especially in light of the fact that you're currently listening to another case where you reopened it before a decision was rendered at the request of the applicant. I think that not to do that for us would be, to say the least, very unfair.
I really resent that we're comparing cases. To me, that just is not, we're talking about your case, nobody else's, or I'm not. Please.
All I can say is, as you probably know, I've been doing this for decades, and the way this board has traditionally worked is to work with the applicant and work with the neighbors to come up with a reasonable solution. And I think that that's exactly what we're trying to do here.
Mr.
So
Flynn.
Mark, if we
time
open
for
the
a job.
case and it makes a better, a better decision on our part, because we would look at the case, they've eliminated variance requests, it's lesser of an application, and it was a split decision sort of on the other vote. And then if we look at, if they make adjustments and withdraw some of the, variance that they're requesting, maybe that's a win for everybody?
No, I would like it to be a win for everybody. I think, Gil, first of all, the obstacle that we're having here is that there was a vote on it, and then the other obstacle is that we're dealing with a situation where removing the garage doesn't seem particularly persuasive to enough board members.
Well, that's what I don't know. I don't know if it's persuasive enough or not.
But you said that there was a vote. There hasn't been any vote. I think that's the important
We
thing.
haven't voted.
There's no vote. But you discussed it at the work session. You said which way the board was going, and it was a split board. I mean, it bears repeating, and to the extent that I should say it, you should know on the initial application we filed the first time, there's an Article 78 proceeding pending. And of course, if we could resolve this, we could probably resolve that too. Otherwise, there may be a lot more time and expense and energy being wasted by everybody, including the board. So we think it makes sense.
Threatened at these meetings. This is not okay with me, the discussion here.
I'm sorry, I missed that. I couldn't hear that.
I don't want to, threatening lawsuits is really.
No, I'm not threatening. There's one already pending. I'm not
I
threatening.
know there is, and now
something
you're saying, I don't want to hear about lawsuits. That is improper.
No, but my point is you're talking about time and expense and so forth. Certainly that would be eliminated if this went through. I mean, it seems to me you'd be saving time, money, you'd be listening to the applicant, the neighbors would have another chance since you'd be wanting to repost and remail it, which we'd be willing to do. Who is prejudiced? That's the thing you always have. Who is really being hurt by doing that? Nobody. Nobody, except nobody.
So
So I would urge you to consider that.
open it is because I'm ready to vote yes on the application that's before us. That's why I said don't reopen it. But if you want us to reopen it, I'll go along with that.
As I said, that you have to remember that one of the things that the chairman said was it was the number of variances that concerned you. So we picked the one actually that was the biggest. If you look at it from a square footage standpoint, we picked the biggest, the most lot coverage. If you look at the chart that I submitted, which is not, of course, part of the record, but you could see we started out with a square footage of over 1,000 square feet. We're down to 366 square feet for everything we're asking for. I mean, it just seems to me, especially, I repeat, in light of the fact that you reopened another case where the applicant was willing substantially to reduce things. How can you do it there and not do it here? That just isn't fair.
What I did try to say, we didn't vote on that one.
Right, you haven't voted on this one either.
You
haven't voted on this one. Yeah, you haven't voted on this one either. So they're procedurally, they're the same kind of case.
We didn't formally vote on it.
No, you
Let me ask you this, Gil, in the interest of efficiency and working things out, why is this spa so critical? Because one concern that the board has is that, once again, we're always concerned about the precedent. The board never really understood why such a small spa was so critical and why it's in the yard. So it's always had that concern. And when given the choice about what to remove, knowing that the spa was the primary concern, you remove the garage. What is it about the spa? Why can't you remove the spa?
Let me just reverse a little bit of what you said. Most of the comments we heard at one of the meetings had to do with the garage and the possibility of living space in the garage. So we got rid of, not only did we get rid of that, but we got rid of the whole building. My client it's not unreasonable to have a small spa in a property like this. In fact, I submitted as additional support in my request to reopen, other cases you've done very similar to this. In fact, there's one right across the street from this where you
I
granted
don't-
hot
With
tubs. So it's not a swimming pool. Remember, we got past it. It's not a swim. There were multiple cases where you've granted spas where you wouldn't grant a swimming pool. I mean, it does, whom does it hurt? Again, you always have to go back to what the law said. The way the benefit to the applicant versus the detriment to the community. Where is there a detriment to the community with having a small spa that's totally screened, nobody can see and nobody can hear? I mean, I fail to see it.
This is the question I'm asking, Joe, just to, again, this is not on the record and it's a way
No,
of
of course,
trying to resolve things.
Right.
Would your client, would the applicant remove the spa and have the garage without the storage? In other words, would that be a successful application from her perspective?
well, let me say this, let me put it to her. And if you would defer your decision until I can get an answer, I would prefer that you do that. Who's prejudiced by that? Nobody.
Mark, can I just say something?
Of course.
I think that a couple of things came into play with the decision. One was in trying to maximize our reductions. So the garage was 450 square feet worth of lot coverage. The spa was much smaller. It also goes to a three-dimensional, density on the property where what you would see from Pine Street would be the garage. You would see, a 16-foot high, 450 square foot mass on the property that would actually be visible and could appear to make the property more cluttered, more dense. The spa, she's looking for a water feature. She's looking to have a little dipping area where she can sit and hang out. It's going to be at grade. I have pictures that I can show you of the property. It's not visible from Pine Street in any way, shape, or form. It's not visible from the neighbors in any way, shape, or form. And honestly, I think that we were maintaining the setback from the neighbor that would be the given on any other property, the 20-foot setback. So the 31-foot setback from Pine Street, being that it's not visible and it's not going to affect any of the neighbors at all, we felt that it was a rational, reasonable decision. It was actually making the property less dense.
Can I just ask, I went on like websites with hot tubs. The size of the tub that you're suggesting is the largest size that's available.
We made it under 100 square feet. We went back to the 8x12. She's looking, we've had the conversation as to whether it was going to be at grade or whether it was going to be kind of 18 inches up or however. She wanted it at grade and she was going to have, be able to step down into it. And she didn't want to, she was trying to maximize her amount of seating around it. If the size of it is up for conversation, I'm sure we can have a conversation about that. But again, you'd have to reopen the hearing so that we could do that.
Well, it said that it.
Susan, you're muted.
I don't know what's going on. When I looked up these hot tubs, they were like with 8 to 10 people in a house on that little property with that house. To me, none of it is really what it seems. I find that really unsettling. It's a pool. Okay, it doesn't fit the regulations of the pool for the village. Let's be straight about it. Is that correct?
Correct. It's not a pool by definition in the village code.
That's right.
Right.
But just say that if the size is an issue, if the size is an issue, we can discuss that. If that's a concern, we will be happy to discuss it. And let me just say one thing from a procedural standpoint. If we repost and remail, we'll give the neighbors a chance. If the neighbors don't have a problem with it, I think that's something we ought to be given a chance to demonstrate. I mean, who is being hurt? Who's being hurt by this? That's the big thing. That's the
At
big
the
question.
outset of the application, now a few months ago, one of the first voices we heard was from a neighbor who strenuously objected to the spa, to the garage, and they made their feelings very well known at that time. And I would certainly, depending on how the board decides, I would want those same neighbors to have the opportunity to speak again.
They certainly would. That's, if we repost and remail, we would send them. By the way, on this re-advised application, they had no objection. And we'd be happy if the board is satisfied, we would be happy to repost and remail. They would have an opportunity, review the record of this particular new application that we filed several months ago. They got notified. They didn't apparently have a problem. They didn't appear.
Julia,
What you did get was a new letter from the guy right across the street who's the most affected from a setback standpoint, who's in favor of it. So at least give us the chance.
Julia, I think also he was concerned about a second floor roof deck. And if
Yes.
you remember, we changed the roof
Right.
pitch so that we
The
couldn't do
neighbor
that.
was strenuously objecting to the totality of the variances. And
Right. And so,
and
I
work
mean,
has been done, but
and and that's why we maintain, I mean, we actually have a 21-foot setback from him. So we're not actually looking for a variance for the hot tub from him. In other words, we're not any closer to him than zoning actually allows.
By the way, again, it bears repeating that his objection was to a swimming pool, and which was much larger.
Right.
So we're not talking about that. And if the size of it is something that's concern to you, we'll revisit that. But give us a chance at a hearing to do that. That's all I'm asking for. Give us a chance to explore that further, which is what you guys have done for decades.
Where's the pool filter going?
I can share my screen with you if you like. I put it kind of off the driveway area, and obviously we would screen around it as well. I located it at 35 feet off of Pine Street and 20 feet off of the neighbor to the west property, and 29 feet off of the neighbor to the north. But I can share my screen and show you if you'd like.
Well, let's, David, if we reposted and remailed, when would we hear this? At what meeting?
That'll be the February meeting.
Okay, I don't have a strenuous objection to reposting and remailing. I do think it would be helpful if you convey the idea that would the applicant consider a garage and eliminate the spa entirely? Is that an application that would accommodate everybody here? Because the idea of the spa and the precedent for the spa is troublesome. Not to belabor the point of where you're putting it, et cetera. It's just, how do we prevent the precedent that now everybody steps forward and says,
But we already had the precedent. We had the precedent already.
But we've given you a handful of them, or you've granted them. It's very similar to this. It's not, the
Yes.
precedent's already there.
And I've read all of them, and they can all be distinguished except for one, which actually wasn't a board decision. But I don't want to split hairs. I'm just,
Yeah.
I'm just
Well,
not
why
on
not?
the record asking in a friendly way with the applicant,
Well,
consider.
yes, why don't we, in the context of a reopening, why don't we get into that? Why don't we discuss it? That's, if we repost and remail, then the neighbors are protected. So if we could do that, I would respectfully request that that's a way that everybody wins. At least we get the chance to discuss it.
The reposting and noticing that in that case would need to, essentially be the same as the prior application that was closed, because then the applicant would go from there to cut off one of those variances being requested. So that way we don't wind up noticing for just a spa and then the applicant trading that for the pool. So the new notice to the applicant, to the neighbors, should be for the same relief that was originally requested in this now closed hearing.
Spinning our wheels here. I move we reopen case number 3087.
I'll second.
So we need three. Okay, so I'll vote in favor of reposting and remailing, and we'll rehear it.
Thank you.
So
Thank you very much.
vote.
So let's take a vote. Who's in favor of reposting and remailing and hearing this case again in February?
Aye.
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 Hey,
And Julia, your
I
vote?
would be a no.
It was 3-2.
It's 3-2, it's fine. We'll see
Okay,
you
next
all in a
case.
month.
We'll go to the next case, which is Meadowmere Partners, case number 3089. I think we're ready for a decision on that. Is Chick here?
He is, but he's muted and we don't have his
Video.
video.
Hello there.
Welcome back, Chick.
Hi, sorry about that. Always takes a second to unmute. Yes, so I was asked to prepare a decision on this. I am working on it. I will have it to everyone by Friday. And if there are any questions on it, we can certainly cover them before the next meeting. But that one was pretty straightforward. I just have to pull a couple of more things together to get that finalized. So I expect to have that in your boxes by Friday.
I was happy to see the letter where clearly the neighbors have worked it out.
Okay, so the next case is 3085 131 Flying Point Realty. And are we ready to consider a vote on that?
Ready to vote in favor of it.
Dan, where are you now on case number 3085 131 Flying Point? That's for the front yard variance, which
Yeah, I'm in favor of
is,
that. I'm in favor of that.
David, where are we on this? We moved the variance from 59
5 to 65.
Okay, so now it's a 65-foot front yard setback. So it's a 65.5-foot setback where 80 is required. They're moving the house 6 feet and reducing the variance request to 18%.
Yeah, I'd vote in favor of that.
I'm fine with it.
Given the weirdness of the lot and the fact that there's a playing field behind it, among other things, I'm okay with it. They still have to go through the ARB, right?
I believe so.
Because, you know,
Yeah,
okay,
it's a new house. They would have to go before the
Okay.
ARB.
good.
Okay, I'm in favor of it as well, so that's unanimous. And also given the given the ball fields behind it and the nature of the front yard setback, the street from which it's being set back. So taking into consideration the particular character of this immediate neighborhood, yes, I would be in favor of it. So we can write that decision, David,
Yes, I can.
and can we have that by Tuesday at noon for the next Thursday meeting?
Yes, I don't see a problem with that.
Okay, so let's move on to case number 3093, 56 Halsey Neck Lane. Are we ready to vote on that?
Is it a new survey?
Yes, as was requested at the last meeting, it was left open for the written submission of a survey showing the house moved further from the front yard, which has been provided.
So the house is now set back
Street,
68.
it shows that 66.2 feet, is that right?
No, the revised survey was submitted showing a 68-foot.
Okay, yeah, it's small, that's what it is, 68, yeah. So that, so we have it, we have the new survey, I'm fine with that.
Oh my.
David, just as a housekeeping detail, do we need to receive a revised sky plane with the movement of the house, or I just want to make sure we have the correct drawings on file?
No, from what I see, that should not be required, the parallel lines, and it's just being moved back. So the sky plane should be identical, the amount of area above the pyramid, even just because you moved it back, it's still, that shouldn't change the angle or anything like that of the sky plane.
And then do you have the pyramid law relief? I have it as 1,555 cubic feet.
Let me see. Total. I show that the pyramid relief, see, there's two sides, is 919 cubic feet.
I thought that was on one side. And then there's another 635.4 on the other.
Okay, I don't have anything that totals it, but I can do that.
No, as long as you have the documents for the
Right,
decision.
I've got 635 plus 919, so whatever that comes out to is our total relief.
That's what I have as well. So I think it's started out as 3,039 cubic feet and was reduced to 1,565 cubic feet, rounding off. But that's the pyramid law relief. But do you think you can have a decision on that by Tuesday at noon?
I believe that should be possible as well.
Meeting?
That should be possible also.
Then moving on to case number 3094980 Meadow Lane.
You ready for my input, Mark?
Absolutely.
Okay. So we went through quite a bit with this. My notes indicate that you would ask me to prepare a permit for the January meeting. That is in the works. I do have all of the plans. I don't think there are any outstanding questions, and I'll have that to you for consideration. Should be by the end of the week. I want to get them done early. So that can be voted on next week if you are inclined. That's also the one that we had a bond on, that we did discuss the amount. It was, usually about the maximum that we've done in the past. And I may be mixing that up with 950.
Yeah, this is 980. 950 was the bond.
That's correct. Okay, so that'll be ready for next week.
Okay, so moving on to case number 3095. This was 35 Cooper Street, pyramid law relief for dormers. Are we ready to vote on that?
I am.
Okay, Susan, how do you vote on approving for case number 3095, dormers requiring 147?
All in favor, all in favor. That's a squatty little house.
I'm in favor.
Kevin, yes.
Yes.
Dan
Yes.
and Julia,
Yes.
and I'm a yes, so that's unanimous, and there's more work for you, David.
No problem.
So for pending cases, let's move to case number 3079, Felix and Elizabeth Royalton Trust. Did anybody see new materials from the applicant? I did not.
Well, what we got?
I saw just neighbor letters.
Okay, so,
Me too. 2 letters, I think, or 1.
Oh, one.
I saw 2.
I have two letters. The letters are from the two of the three neighbors who are closest to this property. One letter came from the neighbor to the north. The neighbor owns 339 and 309 South Main Street. So if you look on the tax map, he's adjacent to 365 South Main. And what he writes is that to allow two building lots of 2 acres each where zoning requires 3 acres will negatively impact both my quality of life and my property value. And the neighbor to the west has a similar viewpoint that the increase in noise and activity, such increased density and accessory structures would bring into our immediate neighborhood in contradiction of current zoning laws, allowing 2 separate buildings would dramatically increase the intensity of use and noise in the immediate area and denigrate surrounding property values in this wonderful historic district. So I thought we should continue our conversation about balancing.
It's my understanding that the building department is or will be issuing some sort of determination in this, as had previously been noted in the application. It said that it was turned down. That was not the case. So I believe that Chris Talbot may be weighing in on this, and we may not need to be discussing this further. And
David, we've been talking about this for months.
I understand that.
Months.
I understand that.
How is it possible that what are we here for? Because I'm going to get up and go. I don't understand this.
Yeah, I didn't understand that, David.
That's
Well, you're saying Chris Talbot is going to make a determination on this, and then the case would not be before us anymore?
That's my understanding.
What determination could he make that would withdraw it from us?
That under the code, these lots didn't merge.
That's not a possible determination.
It is.
So David,
He's the interpreter of the code. The applicant had, I'd say, improperly checked off that he had rendered some determination on this matter. He had not.
But you have advised us that these lots merged.
Legally,
Yes.
that's my opinion under the code, but his opinion under the code supersedes that.
So let me understand this. You're saying the building inspector's opinion under the code as to whether these lots merged
He's the arbiter of that.
supersedes your opinion that
Yes.
the lots did merge.
Yes. He
So
is,
what will we do with this? If he makes a determination, or do we just throw this paperwork away?
that's my understanding, that if depending on how his determination goes, that this application would just be withdrawn.
When is he supposed to have that ready, that determination?
That I don't know the specifics of. It may have been rendered already. I just haven't seen any copies of it.
but
But should we table this until we hear from him?
I'm not on board that when it's gone this far down the line, that our decision can be preempted by the building inspector at this late stage.
If he
We
hasn't-
haven't made a decision yet.
Made a decision.
right. If he hadn't rendered a decision on it, then that's in his purview to render one at this point.
But
But
the
what-
applicant's materials mention that they merged the lots. How,
They-
listen, I'm not going to work in a clown show. How is this possible that we have written material, we've all read it over and over, and then someone's coming in like Deus ex machina and deciding, well, yeah, there really was an angel that's taking the person up to heaven. I don't think so. How is this?
Law, that's the law.
Well, that's what I want to
Wait
talk.
a minute, though, Kevin, this is the second time in 8 months where we have spent many months trying to determine something. And then David tells us that the building inspector is telling us something different. I for one, would very much, I do not know Chris Talbot, but I would very much like to hear from him about this because I don't understand it. But we have now spent months considering these issues and talking about them.
And we would like David.
Obviously,
to
this is
address
very
the-
frustrating, but this is the second.
Can we
time
have Dave
we've
come in
spent
and address the
months.
board at next week's meeting? Chris address our board about this?
I'm going to make that request.
Yes, we would like you to make that request, David, and I would like you to have in front of the board a conversation about how your view is different from his view and why.
That is not my role, respectfully. If the building inspector makes a determination, it is his decision to make. I'm sure we'll have it spoke with the village attorney in that matter. That is not my purview to challenge his decision.
Well, can the village attorney come to, listen to our meeting? To be preempted like this? Really, honestly, why should any of us do anything at any meeting if that's the case? It negates everything we do.
Getting carried away feeling sorry for ourselves, come on.
No, Kevin.
Kevin, this has been 4
I
months.
think,
Kevin,
I
this
think
has
we've
been-
got to hear from, I think what our attorney said is correct. We've got to hear from Chris. If he makes his determination under village code and village law, that's the road, that's what it is.
Maybe he'll say they have merged. We don't know. What are you gonna say?
We
Two
should just hear him
non-conforming
out.
lots held in common ownership merged.
That's the end of it. Take their paperwork and burn it.
David, do you know why he would take the view that two non-conforming lots held in common ownership would not merge?
I hesitate to get down into what his rationale is for this. It's his determination. I'm not sure exactly what made him reach that determination, but he's the one to ask, not me.
Okay, whatever determination.
if you were to
he's making
ask
and
me,
his
Mark,
reasoning, we would like on the record.
Mark, I think if you ask me, I think the building inspector thinks there's 2 COs, one for each building, and maybe that's what he's making a determination on. We got to ask him.
I just wanted on the record as to why 5 months after we've been listening to this case and deliberating, and the applicant has been submitting papers and
I agree with you, Mark.
code provision, that we should put everything on the record.
100%.
So yes, David, before a determination is rendered, we would like the building inspector to appear at the meeting.
Okay.
David, could I just ask another question?
Sure.
I actually do think the timing of this, it's just like Walnut Street. Someone hears that we're not going to go their way and somehow things all change. Is that, what would be the point of us being here? If that's how things are done, that is not how things should be done. I'm not wasting my time and my brain and effort to be just hijinks is what I think this is, to be played.
That's why we're going to have him in and talk to him.
David, I am curious as to why 5 months
I
have.
don't know if a formal request wasn't made previously that now was made, that he had something to act on. I don't know. That's, from what I could gather, that would be my only rational,
What, a formal
one of the
request was
possibilities
made?
is that they were basing it on, either a discussion or prior applications or something that they thought it merged. They did not ask Chris for a formal determination about whether or not it did. And now that it has gotten to this point. Sounds like somebody did ask him for a formal determination, and he is or has made one.
I'm sorry, my recollection of this though, when Linda Riley first brought it to us in, I don't know if that was August or in September, was that the building department had sent her to us. That is my recollection of it. I would want to go back and understand and look at the minutes about it, but that was my recollection. It was one of the, there were a small handful of cases that were being brought to us because they had been referred by the building department. And
I don't know how that was done or in what context or how that was said. But like I said, my only guess would be that there's been a formal request made that wasn't previously made, and now there will be a decision from Chris Talbot on it.
So let me understand something. You think that there's a formal request floating around somewhere that this board has not seen yet?
It wouldn't be made to this board. It would be made to Chris Talbot.
So during the process of this application, who would have made that formal request?
I would assume the applicant or one of the attorneys working on behalf of the applicant.
Can you ask Chris to clarify that for us?
Yes.
And when that request was made, and we would like to see a copy of that request. Yeah, I mean, assuming there is one.
Susan, you're muted. Susan, you're muted.
I would like to know, I think Julia's right, that they tried to just say that it was merged. And my understanding was it first had to come to us before it can go to the planning board to be a subdivided situation. Right, David?
Their application asked for a waiver saying that it hadn't merged, or if the board said that it did merge, that it would be the variances granted to be able to re-subdivide it. That was the original request, was an interpretation of the code saying that it hadn't merged. And that interpretation should have first been made to Chris, and it seems like there was a misunderstanding on the applicant that he had already, or what would have said that it did merge, and now there has been a request and a decision by Mr. Talbot.
But your view is that these lots were merged.
Yes, legally, I believe that they would have merged, but that's not my decision. He's the interpreter of the code.
But
And who supervises his decision?
He is the ultimate arbiter of the village code.
I'm concerned about the timing of this. This is just, if indeed they went to the building department and they told them, you have to go to the ZBA because they need to determine the lot line or the merging or non-merging before they wanted to go to the planning board, right, to get a subdivision. Yes, David?
No, there was an either or. If they said, if you interpreted it that it hadn't merged, then they wouldn't have needed to go back to planning board. It was if determined that it hadn't merged under the code.
Oh, okay, right.
Or if you felt it had merged, to grant the lot area variances to then go to planning and unmerge it.
David, I'm baffled because I've read the code. I've read cases.
It's his determination.
But based on what I would like his determination.
I honestly don't know if he has to explain that to you. I'm not trying to be glib, but it's his determination. I'm sure we can ask him to appear. I don't know what legal requirement he would be under to explain that to the board.
I think just out of courtesy
I
for the
believe
5 months
you,
we've
but I'm
all
just
spent
saying
on this, it's not an
it is-
unreasonable thing for us to be asking.
I
I
don't.
think this is really stunning.
But it's gonna
Hey,
be
Mark,
a decision.
maybe you should just go in and meet with him.
I don't see the point.
David, Dan, I'm at this point, I want everything on the record at this point. Apparently, there have been some conversations, not public conversations, that have happened that are very important to this board, and I'm bothered that we're 5 months into this and finding out that the result of some conversations between the building inspector and the applicant, which should have taken place months ago, have somehow affected this case. And I want everything public. That's my view of this. David,
are they not required? I mean, really, are people just going in and talking to people and, their way, or how's it going? Because I don't see what we have to do with anything anymore, if that's the case.
If it's a determination of the building inspector as to what has or hasn't happened, it's his decision to make based on a request to him with zero input from the board.
I understand that, but how did it get to us in the first place?
He told us that over and over again. Will someone please get it?
Please, how dare you?
Not how dare you. He's told us 5 times already.
I'm allowed to ask, Kevin, excuse me. I want to know how these discussions, how is it happening?
There should have been a request, and in a perfect world, would have been a request before this application came to you from the applicant to the building inspector saying either determine that these have merged or that they haven't merged.
Basically, it sounds like
That
Chris
did
might
not
approve.
occur, whether it was the applicant thought that they needed to come to you first, but that's what was done. It doesn't appear that there was a formal request for a determination from the building inspector as to whether he feels that these lots merged per the code. So unfortunately, if he's making that decision now, and it would just take it out, I know you did spend considerable time on this, but if he makes a determination that this lots have not merged, then that's his determination. And unfortunately, it's something that the board has to live with. And I know address elsewhere, either through conversations with Mr. Talbot or through the village attorney as to how that occurred. But I have not seen a formal determination from him one way or the other that these have or haven't merged.
Well, maybe the village attorney has to come to the meeting. I don't know. To me, there is a step we're missing here.
Well, let's go back a little bit, David. David, how do you know these? How do you know this?
How do I know what?
What you've just advised us.
When I was picking up my packet, I was under the understanding that there may be something coming on Rohatton.
Who told you that?
Be more specific. You're going to pick up your packet, and what happened?
I was informed that it may be withdrawn.
By who?
I was informed by Mr. Bennett that it may be withdrawn.
There you go.
Who was just coincidentally up at the...
No, I spoke to Mr. Bennett.
You were asked to speak to him? How did that go?
I spoke with him. He called me.
Because you're actually getting a third here. Mr. Bennett got it from Mr. Talbot, and told Mr. Bennett, and then Mr. Bennett told you, and now you're telling us. So it's actually, we just got to get to either talk to Chris or somebody here, because we're just going round and around with this. So, somebody's got to talk to Chris.
Okay, let's move on. David, at this point, what bothers me the most is that things are happening and during the course of a public meeting, and it's not public. It's all conversations said on the phone, et cetera. And I'd like it to be brought to light. So let's move on. Do you want to, Four Fountains is the next case, 3097, but I understand that's adjourned.
Yes, we had a number of comments at a prior meeting, and I imagine the applicant is looking to revise the application based on those comments.
And then, so the next case is 3096.
No, hold on 3097. I just wanted to make a point about the flat roof height. The village the request says that they're requesting that a 16.8% flat roof percentage where 5% is the maximum permitted. This is essentially though a height variance. The 116-12 F2 says if you have a greater than 5% of flat roof, then the required height is reduced 7 feet. So I know it doesn't show it on the plan or in the way that it's noticed, but the maximum height is 7 foot less than what's shown on the, I believe, 49 feet on the drawing. So I feel that should be noted for the board.
Got it. So
So
a
the
flat roof house has to be lower than a
percentage
flat roof house.
percentage of flat roof is really goes to the fact that anything over 5% has a 7 foot less reduced height maximum.
And that's what they want relief from.
Correct.
Okay, I understand on case number 3096, Andrew Spritzer, that they're re-advertising.
I had not heard that.
When I was in the building department, I asked for them to take another look at the application, and TN said that they would need to re-advertise based upon the new relief requested. So that's as much as I know about that. My understanding is, could we confirm that with the building department tomorrow?
Yes, 3096.
We have new material on this application.
There was new material, and apparently some of the relief was greater than previously requested. And when TN looked at it a second time, he thought that it would need to be re-advertised as a new application.
All right.
So we'll confirm that. And then on to case number 3098, Apogee Building, 10 Center Street. It's a relatively straightforward case. That's the relief for the swimming pool, 15 feet from the southern side yard where 20 feet is required. And the applicant provided a new survey showing the street setback.
Did we get a new survey on that?
Yes, it's something in the.
Yeah. We did receive a new survey, and one thing interesting was that they talked about a northern front yard setback of 47 feet, but the survey shows 50 feet. So they
So
don't,
somebody's just asked what address we're talking about in
10
the
Center Street.
Q&A.
10 Center Street.
Okay.
So Dan, this was the case where they're removing the existing house and changing the orientation of the house so that now the house fronts Corrigan Street.
Right, but I didn't see a new survey. I don't know if did you get a new survey?
I did. So the new survey showed that the prior survey did not show the street setback.
Right.
From Center Street. So then they didn't have that line, but the line shows that they do not need variance relief from that setback because they are 50 feet. They are 50 feet from Center Street. The request for 15 feet where 20 feet is required from the southern side yard is still being requested.
I don't think I have a problem with that. It's a corner lot. It's, the house is 17 feet and, it's like, there's like 2 foot difference between what the house setback is and what the pool is.
Does anybody else want to weigh in?
Is there a reason why they have to not have it according to code? I find it hard to deal with. If they do 20 feet, then they have to make the pool smaller, right?
Or find a
They have-
different
how much
orientation
they
for
have
the
to have
pool?
on the other side. Now it's the side yard. It's 2 front yards.
It's, but they do comply with the front yard setback. I mean, my issue with this is that there's nothing about the size, shape, topography, or character of this property that warrants a variance.
They could turn the pool the other way.
I have a problem with pools getting a variance. House is one thing, a pool is something else.
It
Julia,
does
where are you on this?
increase the noise for this neighbor, but I don't know, they haven't provided us with any view of
What's
where.
the new size of the pool?
15 by 35. 18 by 35.
We could go 18 by 32. 32 is a sort of a standard size pool.
That
That's
would be
interesting.
That would be 3 lets, so you're only giving them, then they would only need 2 feet of relief instead of 5. And then you could,
Then it would be square with the house or whatever.
exactly, it would line up even with the back of the house.
That seems like a really good solution to me.
Pool, right?
I agree.
Take 3 feet off the pool?
Yeah,
Fine.
Because then it's only about 2 feet. That seems like a really good solution.
Yes.
Okay, so I guess we'll leave it open for the meeting. Is that okay with everybody?
it's okay with,
If we can tell them then, or we can get in touch with them now and tell them.
Well, I mean, my problem with these variance requests is that if there's nothing about the property's configuration or topography, then they don't deserve a variance. They could take the spot and put the steps on the side. There has to be a little bit more of a little bit more of a presentation from an applicant to show why a variance is requested or needed.
I agree.
I think it's nice of everybody to offer a smaller variance, but I'm just not seeing that this variance request is warranted. But I'll we can talk about it. So what everybody's saying is just make it even with the house at 17.1 feet.
that's what I was saying, yeah.
And Julia, you're okay with that if it's 17.1 feet?
I am fine with that. This is a non sequitur, but there is somebody who is also asking a question to all of us. They want to know what happened to 3096. I guess they've been here for some time, and they wanted to know that 3096 is being readdressed. She was having a hard time hearing it. Can you confirm that 85 Hildreth has and will need to be resubmitted is what the question is that we're being asked.
I'm sorry, I didn't see that. I can type a message to her. I'm
Okay.
typing, I just didn't see that. I'll take care of it.
Okay, it just keeps coming across my screen. That's why I keep interrupting with them. Yes, 17.2 feet is fine with me.
Okay. Would that be fine with you, Kevin
Yes, that's fine.
and Susan?
I hear what you're saying, Mark. But if it's only 2 feet, although I'm willing to give that in this case, but maybe that's what I think.
Okay, so we'll make it 17.1 feet, even with the house itself.
Mhm.
And
This
if
is
the,
still has, this
applicant-
is still open. This was adjourned, not, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes,
So this will still have a public hearing at the next meeting to discuss
yes.
the actual distance. And I had seen the applicant's name on the participant list, so should be hearing all of your comments, so.
Good.
Good, good. Okay, so let's move on to new cases. Case number 3099, JNC Halsey Neck LLC, 1384 Meadow Lane. Is this, David, is this ready for us?
I
Can you,
feel there was, some of the surveys were missing numbers, for instance. Also, one sheet neglects to show the entire property. I wasn't happy with how it was presented. I thought that there were many missing links and probably some of them purposeful, which I did not appreciate.
David, can you guide us on, if you're ready for us, can you guide us on the standard we should follow in this case?
If you don't feel there's enough information for the meeting, then of course we need to request it from the applicant. It sounds like that there's information that's missing that the board feels is necessary.
No, what I meant was that this is a different variance request than we have addressed previously. This is a variance request for building in the coastal erosion hazard area. So could you start off by, if you're ready, guiding us on what standard we should be following, what criteria we should be following in considering this application?
Sure. The coastal erosion hazard area standards for variances is in 49-19 of the village code. No reasonable, prudent, or alternative site is available. B is all responsible means and measures to mitigate adverse impacts on natural systems and their functions and values have been incorporated into the activities designed at the property owner's expense. C, the development will be reasonably safe from flood and erosion damage. D, the variance requested is the minimum necessary to overcome the practical difficulty or hardship, which was the basis for the requested variance. And E is not applicable. It's when public funds are utilized, the public benefit must clearly outweigh long-term adverse effects, but there's no public funded project, so that one's not applicable.
So what's the first criterion?
No reasonable, prudent, or alternative site is available.
So should we be looking at that, whether there's a reasonable alternative site available?
Yes.
Okay, I mean, 'cause it looks like there's plenty of room.
Chair, I do have Mr. Bennett's hand up. I know it's not a public hearing, but I wanted to inform you.
Thank you.
Mark, I don't know how much you want to get into this for the purpose of the work session, but I do have a plan available if you want me to share something.
No, that would be great. No, the more we can get into it for background, the better off I think we'll all be.
Actually, I have the village code up. Let me change over to the plan. Hold on one second. Is that visible?
Yes.
So Meadow Lane is to the north. It's a narrow property. It is south, east of Road D, south of Meadow Lane. Ocean to the south. This is the existing two-story house. This is the coastal erosion hazard area line. And I can zoom out.
Dick, do you want to speak a little bit to the importance, in your view, of the coastal erosion hazard line?
The section of the code that David read from before, I think it was 49-19, that provides the relevant criteria. And there are some environmental performance type review considerations. In this case, I'm sure we'll hear from the applicant at the upcoming meeting that the house is fully within the coastal erosion hazard area and what is proposed is being moved back. But certainly the criteria that we have to work with do look at alternatives and, you know, those should be explored. If it were a vacant piece of property, the construction would be north of the coastal erosion hazard area line. The line is there for a reason. I haven't studied this in detail because I expect that we will hear from the applicant and be able to ask questions and further deliberate. I do have aerial photography, which I think is helpful. Is that visible by chance?
I'm not seeing it, Chick.
Okay, I guess I have to do a new share.
There we go.
Okay, so this is the house currently fully within the coastal erosion hazard area. You know, there may be some considerations with respect to the surrounding properties. The CHA line is roughly in this area to the north of the existing house. And it appears as though there are other homes that are built around this property. So again, I don't want to preempt what we may hear from the applicant, but I think it's important to take all of this into consideration, use the 4 or actually 3 applicable guidelines from 49-19, and great once we have all the information.
You mentioned there are reasons for the coastal erosion hazard line. Could you, from your background, mention what the reasons for the coastal erosion hazard line might be?
It is to protect the coastline. It is generally associated with areas that were mapped under Article 34 of the Environmental Conservation Law. Typically, that section of the code is implemented by the building inspector. And as I said, in a case of new construction, the building inspector would look to have all development outside of the coastal erosion hazard area. In this case, it's before us for this relief provision under Chapter 49, and we have to weigh it against the intent of not constructing within an area that's designated under Article 34 as a coastal erosion hazard area. The environmental and applicable considerations are pretty obvious. It is to protect the coastline. And, that's really what Chapter 49 addresses. David, if you have anything to add from a legal perspective, that could be helpful, but that hopefully responds to your question, Mark.
I have a question for you, Chick. On the survey, I didn't look through the whole package, but I mean, like, there's no driveway on this, there's no septic on this, there's no dry wells on this, where's it all gonna fit,
This is the plan that I have from the file. It appears to show a driveway. It appears to show Cultec drainage structures for drainage.
Oh, that's a driveway goes right over the drainage system?
Yes. And sanitary, I might have to look at another plan, or again, as I said, we'll certainly hear from the applicant. At least on this one, I don't see sanitary, but I do see a retaining wall. So typically, we may see a sanitary system in this area if there's a retaining wall. But I don't see it called out on this plan. And as I said, I haven't reviewed this in great detail because I expect we'll hear a presentation. I will say that typically I am not directly involved in these. I'm happy to advise the board. This does involve environmental parameters, but this is not a wetland permit under Chapter 116. So I'm more than happy to provide advice and guidance, as requested.
Chick, can I ask you a question? Based on your experience, how does the coastal erosion line change every year?
My experience is that this was mapped by the DEC in the 80s.
Yeah.
Under, as I said, Article 34. And that map is an official map. The maps are filed with the state DEC. They're available to the village, and the village implements the program through their law, through their local law, and through the building inspector. And to my knowledge, these lines do not change. I deal with it in other parts of the county, and that's based on my experience.
I see. I was asking because I noted that everything about the coastal erosion line on not this plan, but on others that were submitted were dated to 19. And I wondered if now in 21, those lines might have been altered or pushed further back.
The FEMA base flood elevations and the flood insurance rate maps, they change periodically, and there was one change that was recorded roughly 10 years ago, maybe a little less. But in the case of the coastal erosion hazard area line, to my knowledge, it does not change. It's still based on the original maps that were adopted by DEC.
Okay, thank you.
David, is that consistent with your understanding as well?
That is my understanding. And I do see on the Arrayas design plans, there is a septic on the, I believe that's the west side of the tennis court. So right over there by that, between the proposed patio off the tennis court and the retaining wall on the left side of the screen as you're looking at it, there's a proposed system.
Okay, I'm sure I have that plan. I don't want to fumble around. And again, we'll be getting more information.
Dick, one question I do have is you showed an aerial of this immediate area. Do you have an aerial showing the coastal erosion line as it runs from Road D to Halsey Neck?
Not on an aerial. The original maps were based on the USGS quadrangle maps, which are basically planimetric maps. So not on an aerial photograph. I could check if there are any GIS layers that map the coastal erosion hazard area line on an aerial photograph, but I don't have that at this time.
David, do you think you could find out from the building department whether prior oceanfront new construction requested a variance from the coastal erosion hazard line? I mean, in 950 and 980 Meadow Lane, the two most recent cases, I do not believe they requested relief from the coastal erosion hazard line. So could you get for us maybe the last 5 to 10 cases where there was new construction on Meadow Lane and whether or not there was a request for a variance from the coastal erosion hazard line?
I will ask. I don't know if they keep I don't think they keep a chart of that, so it may require them to do some digging. So I don't know how
they have a map that shows the latest new construction on the ocean front.
I'm not aware if they had a map of that.
Yeah, I mean, it would be helpful. Does anybody else have some questions?
No, I'll hear them next week.
Susan, do you have any questions?
Well, I do see that, I have questions about, they have a building permit for the tennis court that they've gotten, and now they're gonna knock down the house and kind of piecemeal this together. Is that correct, David?
Yes, they did have a copy of the tennis court permit.
How does that work when it's within 3 months of, I don't know, I feel so unsettled that we are just being gamed, played. You know, maybe the tennis court, so now they're gonna build, you can't build a tennis court without a house. They have an old house there. And the
Correct,
tennis
there's the house
court
there now.
would, so that's how they get the tennis court permit? And now,
Well, we
they're-
allow tennis courts 90 feet off of Meadow Lane on Dune Road.
that's fine, it just makes the house go over the coastal erosion line.
Correct.
That's why everything is so jammed together, Dan, looks like to me. And I
Yeah.
find,
I'd like to see that coastal erosion line for those houses on the left and the right, because of, you know, that it's gonna look odd if this house is pushed all the way to the road and everything else is in front of it.
Right.
it's not.
Well, Dan, we can
believe-
leave the appearance from the streetscape to the ARB, but I'm more concerned with the guideline for the coastal erosion hazard law, which is the #1 guideline is you need to show that you don't have a conforming location. And I think it's easy to see here that you do have a conforming location. But installing a tennis court is part of your building envelope. So this house is sited 200 feet back from the road. It could be sited further to the north.
That's true, then you just eliminate the tennis court.
I think they're asking for the relief, the way I'm seeing it, in order to fit the tennis court.
Okay,
But if you didn't put a tennis court in there, then you could easily, and they don't have a tennis court now, you could easily use the building envelope to the north of the coastal erosion hazard line. There's plenty of room.
that's true.
So why aren't they required to use the conforming location?
Because they want a tennis court.
Yes. And is a tennis court a reason to grant relief from the coastal erosion hazard line? That's what I'm looking at, and I think that's what Susan's mentioning, that they're now trying to put in the tennis court where it seems a little bit inconsistent with their future plans.
Yeah, I understand, but I'd love to see this house plotted to the north of the coastal erosion, and I'd like to know where those houses on the left and right are in relation to that coastal erosion, you know?
Yes.
Yep.
I believe Exhibit B of the materials submitted shows the current house on this property and the coastal erosion line for both the property. It looks like the 2 to the east and 1 or 2 to the west, you can see on the aerial that was submitted. So that is there, but I'm sure you can ask them to show the proposed on that as well.
We'll make one observation just to be aware of that when you look at the aerial photograph, this to me looks to be a pool.
Yep.
And that would appear to be outside of the coastal erosion hazard area. And in looking at the survey, there's a pool within the coastal erosion hazard area.
Right.
So something to inquire about as well.
Chick, I didn't understand that. What page are we on here? On the aerial?
Yeah, you have an aerial in your package that David
Yeah, I do.
as exhibit, and I just have a, Google aerial here. So here's the existing house.
Right.
The erosion line is roughly here.
Mhm.
Here's as there, as though there's a pool to the north of the coastal erosion hazard area line.
Which is therefore allowed. The house is what's not in compliance with the coastal hazard line, right?
Right.
That,
And in the
But
proposed,
they're talking about a whole new pool.
that pool's being removed. If you
Right.
see in the survey that Chick has up under where the word 2-story is, you can see the outline of the existing pool.
Right. So they're trying to get, to me, is there anything that stops them from moving the tennis court north? How far back is it? There are so few numbers on this thing, it drives me crazy.
it's 90 feet.
And what's required?
90 feet.
I believe it's 90, yes.
So they don't really have room unless they get a variance, right?
It looks like the new house is north of the coastal erosion line, but the patio and pool are not.
That's what they're asking for.
Yeah.
That's what the
Yeah,
applicant,
Dan, I looked at that too. It's not just a patio. I mean, there's a complete foundation underneath that.
Yeah, whatever the plans show. That's what I see.
Yeah, no. When I looked at that and I saw proposed patio, I liked it. Oh, maybe it's just a wood deck. But no, if you look at the plans, there's an entire foundation under there. So they have 5,000 square feet, more than 5,000 square feet of structure being built south of the coastal erosion hazard line. So if that's by their calculation, it's over 5,000 square feet. But it's literally the foundation of a house because the pool is a gunite pool. So all of that you're seeing where they say proposed patio and proposed pool, underneath there being built south of the coastal erosion hazard line is concrete foundation work with pilings. Or I should say concrete foundation work. I'm not sure. I didn't see any piling plan, but that's all concrete foundation.
well, that makes it even more onerous to prove that that would be okay. Because you're right, if it was a wood, well, even the pool. So the question really is, well, I mean, obviously, the rush to build the tennis court has to do with the fact that the house doesn't fit without a variance in my head. And I don't know what we should say, but it looks tight to me.
I think it's pretty aggressive.
Yep.
And if you
My
look at the
concern with
plans,
this
it's
is,
actually,
although it looks like patio and pool, according to the applicant's calculations, it's 5,372 square feet being built south of the coastal erosion hazard line. That's the size of a house.
That's outrageous.
Yeah.
Okay, well,
if I may, if you look at the plan, the lower level plan, actually there's a basement storage area that's connected to the main house that extends across the coastal erosion hazard line.
well,
Between
that's.
the house-
Is
Between the house and the pool, there is underground storage area.
So in their application, did they mention moving the extra part of the house that you're mentioning now, the basement being extended or whatever you call it? No,
I did not check.
well, I did. Well, I don't see that as part of, they keep saying they're just getting, I can't, I'm not sure I can take any more of this. None of this, I'm not a detective.
I just wanted to highlight that when we're looking at from this perspective, that's more than a proposed patio that you're seeing south of the coastal erosion hazard.
Right.
They're calling it storage, but it's essentially house foundation.
Yeah.
It's a basement.
Well, I certainly feel like just this early conversation will give the applicant the opportunity to have an early read so that they'll be well prepared for their presentation next week. Because there are a lot of questions that we're obviously all bringing up.
Yeah, and also for us to focus on whether we have questions for the applicant. But as Susan pointed out, it was curious that with this house, they went for a building permit because I think now it used to be under our jurisdiction to grant relief for the tennis court. But we have a new law which allows tennis courts in the front yard. Otherwise, this would have been part of the presentation to us. In other words, they would have been requesting relief for the location of the tennis court in the front yard, but they don't need to because of the new law.
I see.
But that doesn't mean that we have to then give them a variance for their house to hang out over the coastal erosion line. I mean, it works two ways, no?
Right. I just, the tennis court is currently not there. The other thing that's a little bit bothersome, and David, we can start to address this because it's going to come up again and again. We have a new law that allows front yard accessory structures on oceanfront properties. And I think the purpose of the law is to protect the environment, that on balance, we want to protect things like the dunes and the coastal erosion hazard line. And we're offering to any homeowner and any applicant without a variance to put their pool in the front of the house. But they're not doing that here. They're still asking and obtaining relief for their front yard tennis court under the new law, not having to request a variance, but still asking for relief from their proposed pool. So I just wanted to point out, it's a different context for me when you have a law that now allows you to install your accessory structures in the front yard if you're oceanfront, and you're not taking advantage of that. And at the same time, you're not giving the village the benefit of what I thought was what their intention was in the new law, which was to protect the environment.
If you have a house on the ocean,
Be more liberal.
you're gonna want the pool on the ocean side of the house so you can sit by the pool and look at the ocean.
Right.
So it doesn't make any difference.
Yeah.
You want the pool on the ocean side of the house.
Well, if they wanted that, they can pull their house back and get rid of the tennis court. There's ways to do this.
Exactly.
I have a question. Is this the entire application? Is application for note? Where is the part where they actually have, is it for variance relief on property located within 500 feet of a county, state, or federal road, or within 500 feet of the ocean or body of water?
No,
Where's the page that says what they claim they're doing?
that is their rider that's attached. There are 2 pages of, or page of written comments.
Where?
It's attached. It's the 3rd page of the application. There's the 2 pages of the form application. At the bottom of page 1, it says request and grounds for relief, number 8, and it says see attached rider.
I don't have any page numbers. The page that I have,
I'm not,
I read from, is the last page that looks anything like an application. Then there is an explanation, but where is the application pieces? Where do they state by law? I don't have,
your application did not have any such place for that. The form application from the village has, on the first page of it, which should be the first page of your packet, says request and grounds for relief. And then the applicant, please see the attached rider. And that is that 3rd page of the document that you have in front of you that says rider to Board of Appeals application. And it says the applicant seeks relief and what they're seeking relief for. So that page tells the relief they're seeking.
which is relief. I don't see it spelled out. I see that they want to do something within 500 feet.
No,
But where-
you're looking at the wrong page.
I don't have another page. I have a page that says, the filing fee. Please see attached rider. Are you talking about that page, David?
Yes, the attached rider.
So where's the rider?
It was the third page of my packet that I had received.
Rider to board, but is that,
Yes.
that's how they do it? That's just, okay, and this is legal application?
This is why you're changing the application, so it's
Okay.
spelled out in front of you more succinctly.
Why am I getting, because to me, this is like, well, never mind. I want it to be in a straightforward, business-like fashion.
They're working with the application that had been provided. The relief that's being requested is on the agenda and notice. So, they do spell it out, but again, this is why you're changing your application form. So you have what the specific relief is requested in a concise.
Okay, I see it under the notice, but it should be on the application. I'm not a Swami. I mean, really.
Well, that's what the building department determines it by reviewing the material, and that's what's put on the notice for the relief that they're requesting. That's determined.
Move
by
on to the last case.
I'm sorry, Dan?
That's what they say, 3099. Request relief from section 116-8D1, required 100-foot setback from crest of dune, and section 49-19, variance from coastal erosion hazard area.
But it doesn't say where are the dimensions for what they're requesting? It says
Looks to me as though they're in the rider, Suzanne.
they're written in the rider and shown on the survey.
I see that, but there's no explicit, like under the.
I don't know another way to say there's not. I'm sorry.
Okay, I'm sorry. I just find it that I did not
didn't require it.
Okay, I just find it to be almost impossible to pin down what exactly is going on. I can see it on the site plan, some of which leave out the tennis court when they're doing a comparison of the house there now and the house that they intend to build, leave the tennis court off that sort of pseudo site plan. The whole thing is just gerrymandered and I think meant for obfuscation. I don't know.
Okay, so we'll hear more at the public hearing.
But do we need a better, I don't know. Do we actually have?
You want to do the last case, Mark?
Yeah,
Let's go to case number 3100, Barbara Reuter and William Williams, who are requesting a catwalk.
Yep.
Chick, do you want to weigh in on that if you've had a chance to look at it?
standard.
Yes, I have had a chance to look. Again, I didn't look at it in great detail. Typically, we hear from the applicants at the hearing. This is the survey showing the proposed catwalk. There is a cross section. It's a structure that goes from this wood wall across wetlands. This is the mean high water line, and it goes out to the Taylor's Creek. There's no float with this. There's a ladder, so it appears to be some type of kayak or paddleboard or recreational use access, but no float is proposed. I did observe that it's through flow decking, which will allow vegetation to grow beneath. I would be asking the applicant to explain how this position was arrived at. It is fairly close to the property line. It looks like 20 feet is the dimension here. But I do note that the vegetated wetlands are here. And I might just ask if it makes sense to move it so that it's covering less vegetated wetlands, or perhaps, something could be done to connect it so that there's less span over vegetated wetlands. But those would be my only questions. A catwalk is preferred to trampling wetlands if someone is going to be accessing the water for the purpose of recreation or paddleboarding. And typically a catwalk structure such as this is fairly well minimized, and with through flow decking, it will allow vegetation to grow. So these are typically permitted structures because they do tend to provide protection for the wetlands as opposed to just walking through those areas. But those are my only observations at this time.
So
And-
could you just say where you think
Questions?
it would be a better place for it to be?
Say that again, Suzanne?
You're saying the location could perhaps be changed so that it was,
Yeah, if they move it to the left, it doesn't go over as much wetlands.
well, not, what is that, the driveway?
No, this is the limit of wetlands, this solid line that's designated.
Right,
Um,
I got that part. I just don't see how it's gonna get that much better. That's,
Yeah, it just covers less wetlands. Again, it's not an extensive structure, and it will allow vegetation to grow. But, you know, it was an obvious question to me is, would it be better to span less vegetation and
and so
perhaps?
to take it off the deck of their house, is that what you're saying?
It's off a wood wall. The driveway is here. There is a small narrow deck off the house here. And
And
again,
what-
if it were
oh, what is
aligned,
that? What is the weirdly rhomboidish, I don't know what shape that, what is where there's less vegetation notated, a little to the left? What is that?
this area.
Yeah,
That would be lawn area or just not.
oh, okay,
land
so you think
vegetation.
it could come down from there? Is that what you're saying?
Saying that if it were moved slightly to the west, that it would span less
Okay,
wooded
I hear you.
wetlands. That's all.
Okay,
And again, I would like to hear from the applicant what the logic was for locating it where it's proposed, and would it be possible to span less vegetated wetlands?
Vic,
Okay.
you mentioned that there's not a float. What's a float? Because it says that there's a 4-foot by 12-foot dock. Is that a float?
The way I was reading this plan, that was a fixed pier. So if you can see this, I don't see any float proposed. Let me just change my orientation a little bit. This is the fixed pier. It's supported by these
Mhm.
small stakes or small pilings. I see a steps. It says steps for proposed recreational use. And typically you might see, you know, if it's an area that has navigable water, you might see a ramp down to a float, but that's not what's proposed here.
Yeah, I'm reading,
That's-
I'm reading, it says, applicant requests relief for a 4-foot by 160-foot catwalk with a 4-foot by 12-foot dock to an eastern side yard setback. Do you see the 4-foot by 12-foot dock?
Yes, I believe that's this, it's kind of like a T at the end of
Yeah.
this long catwalk.
there, it says dock, doesn't it? Oh, it says deck for the other house.
So I believe that's this T-shaped structure right here.
Okay, and that's not what you would refer to as a float?
Correct.
Okay.
Again, looking at it in cross-section, there's no float shown, so that T-section is not shown in this because it's a cross-section profile, but it is shown on the other drawing. Right
We
here.
could ask him for a better drawing of that.
Yeah, that's all I saw as part of the application, so certainly we can clarify that.
Kara, I do have a Barbara Router here. I just wanted you to be aware. I know it's not a public hearing, but the hand is up.
Did she want to speak? Sure.
She's the owner.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, hold on one second. I'll get her in. Barbara, if you wouldn't mind putting your camera on and unmuting yourself, please.
Unmute myself. You have to see me.
That's up to the board.
So,
Whoops. Anyway, the reason it's located where it is has to do with the pine trees. So there are 2 pine trees and we're placing it between the 2 pine trees so we don't have to remove any tall trees that have been there for a long time. So that had to do with the placement at the end of the driveway there. So that was why we put it where we did, the 20 feet. It is a T and it's not meant to have any kind of a floating dock. We really don't want a dock. We don't want any more motor things in the creek. We have enough of that. There are too many jet skis now. So it's really meant for kayak and paddleboard, and that's why it's designed the way it is. We made it wider at the end, or would like to make it wider at the end, so that you could actually keep your paddleboard there and maneuver better than you can if it was just a simple catwalk with the stairs down. So that's why we made it a T.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Good, so we'll hear this at the public meeting next Thursday night. We'll hear case number 3100, 599 Meadow Lane, and I think that's it for this evening, unless somebody wants to bring up anything else. Julia, you're good? Kevin, did you want to bring
I'm
up
good.
anything else?
Say goodnight, Gracie.
Yes. Dan, do you have anything else, or should we sign
No,
off? You're good. We'll see everybody Thursday night.